Hi, thanks, Felice. Hi, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here today. I decided to go old school, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of this miner's light effect with my notes, and I just really want to share some of my thoughts about the magnificent Garrett Bradley American Rhapsody exhibition. I just also want to start by expressing my deep enthusiasm for this show and respect to the CAM, and in particular Rebecca Madelon, who curated it, who's here today, for bringing Garrett's work in her first solo museum exhibition here in Houston. She is an artist and filmmaker of considerable repute and is definitely on the rise, and we're proud to have her here. I also want to give a shout out for that catalog, which is an incredible object, just in and available in the shop downstairs. There's a plug. And also, the CAM has a YouTube channel, and you can see a lot of discussions about all of the exhibitions here, but very soon, last night's conversation that Rebecca had with the scholar Huey Copeland, and also a very enlightening conversation that I found as I was preparing for this that Rebecca had around the opening with the artist Garrett Bradley. So lots of ways to learn more, and please indulge me in sharing my insights about the show. I know this is really about seeing the art. And I also will do a little bit of shorthand, because you can find out a lot of the things that I'm going to mention in other places, and I just really have a limited amount of time. Garrett Bradley's short films and feature-length projects have been exhibited internationally at noted film festivals and museums, but again, this is her first solo museum show. She's received numerous awards and honors, including currently a 2019-20 Rome Prize from the American Academy in Rome, where she is currently based. And this just in, less than a week ago, Garrett received a prize at the Sundance Film Festival, the Documentary Directing Award for her feature Time, which I'm going to tell you about a little bit later. But I really hope we can have a conversation about bringing time to Houston, which I've just mentioned to Rebecca. And I also want to mention, because some of you may have seen When They See Us, the Ava DuVernay's award-winning drama about the exonerated five, and actually Garrett Bradley directed second unit on several episodes of that. So she is definitely working in different spaces, including the museum and art world and mainstream cinema and television. I also wanted to share the dictionary's definition. Sorry, I'll bring the mic back. The word rhapsody. The definition from Merriam-Webster: a portion of an epic poem adapted for recitation, a highly emotional utterance, a highly emotional literary work, effusively rapturous or extravagant discourse. I think that really suits what we're seeing here, especially the piece America that I'll get into in just a moment. But I think it's an extraordinary exhibition title. I thought I should share a bit about what I've learned regarding Garrett Bradley's approach to filmmaking and her art-making practice. She received her MFA from UCLA, which is a storied filmmaking program that has a very important history, and we see how it's relevant to her as a young African-American filmmaker. There was a group of student filmmakers at UCLA in the 70s, and they named themselves the LA Rebellion. It came out of the civil rights movement, and these were student filmmakers who were learning filmmaking together and having the opportunity to tell their own stories. And one of those filmmakers, Billy Woodbury, is a mentor to Garrett Bradley, and she has cited his influence, but she has also said that at American filmmaking programs, there is often a traditional approach to narrative and storytelling that she somewhat rejects. She said in the conversation with Rebecca Madelon, "You can't always start with a story. I'm always more interested in questions. I like to look outward, and maybe I don't always get to the answers for these questions." You can see her taking a different direction in all three pieces, and in particular, her experimental approach that you see in America and in AKA, which is the work over there. So we'll start with America, which is the piece behind me, this is inspired by one silent film that you may have heard of and another that you probably have not heard of. So I would say this, the one you would have heard of probably is D.W. Griffith's film, Birth of a Nation, a silent film from 1915. It was an epic about the Civil War, it was the most ambitious film. That was the second decade of the cinema, but it was controversial upon its release and continues to be more than a century later for the negative depictions of black characters, the positive depictions of the Ku Klux Klan, and nonetheless, the Library of Congress named it to the National Film Registry in 1992. Garrett Bradley, very familiar with that film, but also became familiar with a film of a very different nature, Lime Kiln Club Field Day. This is a 1913 silent film directed by Edwin Middleton, T. Haynes Hunter, and Sam Corker Jr. And you actually are seeing excerpts of that earlier in the reel of America, which is behind me. This film stars a famous Caribbean-American musical theater performer and recording artist named Bert Williams, and the cast included Harlem-based entertainment pioneers and other theater performers. It is considered the oldest surviving film to feature African-American cast members. But after an hour of filming, the project was abandoned. The film was never finished. The reels were discovered in a storage facility that the Museum of Modern Art had for its film archive, and through their curator's initiative, the film was restored, and a decade after it was made, actually exists. And this is really one of the starting off points for Garrett Bradley. She rightly observed that there are many films that we will never see that are lost films from early decades of the cinema by and about African Americans. And what she does here in America is to create those films. It is a 12-episode cycle of films featuring black life, pretty much middle-class life, touching on historical aspects such as the Buffalo Soldiers, Bessie Coleman, the Aviatrix. She has Boy Scouts here, and so you will see scenes of daily life that she created to kind of create a history that doesn't exist, that she thinks is important. And although she says that these are set in the sort of 19-teens to 1920s, there is definitely a very contemporary feel, as you'll see. Now, to make this film, she has been based in New Orleans, I think, for about a decade. She shot this on a soundstage outside of New Orleans with a cast of about 100 people, the majority of whom were non-professional actors, including a lot of children. And I learned from Rebecca yesterday in the conversation that her practice is not necessarily to script the scenes, but more to allow for improvisation with the people she has come to know who she casts in this particular film. And you'll see if you watch it, I encourage you to watch it when I'm not talking, you will see children just giving remarkable performances as well as adults, but it's a very natural feel and fascinating that she has done it that way. It's installed very intentionally on these white sheets to give you a physical experience. So you're standing there, but you actually, even right now, could be walking around, seeing how it reflects, images reflect on each other, on the walls, on the people who are watching. And this is the approach that the CAM took, which I think is fascinating, especially in this space. This is one of the scenes that was a little bit more stylized and scripted that evokes the Last Supper. Garrett said in her conversation with Rebecca at the exhibition's opening, "I was thinking about what it meant to make a contemporary silent film, storytelling from a physical standpoint." The sound is remarkable. It is by musicians who are part of London's Black Audio Film Collective, Trevor Matheson and Udit Desija. And as you'll hear when you don't have me, it's very immersive and amazing. But again, here are some scenes that are more of the period that the original film was set in. It's on a loop. It begins with images, still images of Bert Williams, the actress, and excerpts from Lime Kiln Club Field Day, followed by scenes that she filmed herself. The film's scenes are episodic, and you will hear a man's voice saying America and speculating on what that means to him. You really have to strain to hear that, but that is part of the sound design and the intention. I consider this film truly timeless and think it deserves more time than we have right now, so I do encourage you to revisit it. I also wanted to mention that Bradley moves fluidly from an installation style approach to presenting her films to something more traditional, theatrical, single channel, you might say. I want to give a shout out to a really great film curator in Brooklyn, Ashley Clark at BAM, the Cinematheque at the Brooklyn Academy of Art. Last fall, he programmed America over a week, pairing it with a different film each night. You can actually find an interview, a conversation actually, that Garrett Bradley did with the legendary filmmaker Julie Dash during that week. And I wanted to just tell you the name of that and some of the films that they paired America with for comparison. So again, this was last fall at the BAM Cinematheque in Brooklyn. Garrett Bradley's America, A Journey Through Race and Time. And one night they did show Lime Kiln Club Field Day with her film. They did a night of America and the race film. They paired it with other shorts, some of which we're about to see from Garrett's work. They paired it with Stormy Weather another night. And Julie Dash, who I've mentioned, is another filmmaker from that LA Rebellion period, best known for Daughters of the Dust. And those who know me know that I would, of course, not do this without a shout out to something coming up at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston across the street. We are showing Daughters of the Dust, presented by Dr. Alvia Wardlaw from University of Texas Southern University, and that will be in the beginning of April as part of the MFAH programming to complement the Photo Fest Biennial, which is about African cosmologies, coming up soon. But anyway, I think it's very interesting that we can see it this way, and then you might go somewhere else to another city or a film festival and be able to just sit in a chair and see America just straightforward on a screen. The two as professional actors who star in the film, this is one of them, are dancer choreographers, and you can see the influence of their background and their qualifications here. I'd like to talk about the piece AKA, and we can walk over here. Some of you can go in the room, or you can experience it afterwards. I know time is growing short, so I want to be sure we get to all three pieces. This is a feminist project that Bradley created and cast by reaching out to people on social media, notably Instagram. She filmed a number of women in conversations about relationships between mothers and daughters, and also about skin color, including families where family members might have different colors of skin. There is definitely a trajectory of films about black women and skin color. For example, Douglas Sirk's Imitation of Life, various films starring Lena Horne, and arguably of most interest to Bradley, Illusions by Julie Dash, which was shown in Brooklyn, as I just mentioned. What you see in AKA is a more lyrical and indirect approach to that inspiration, as we have learned about from her discussion of the work. She had the unexpected delight of cinematography that reveals a prismatic rainbow effect that also impacts the theme. You'll hear the question, are you color struck? And that's the name of a 1925 play by Zora Neale Hurston. And you can learn more about that in the catalog for the exhibition. As for the film's title, AKA, there's a dual meaning. Of course, it's as known as, but also refers to Alpha Kappa Alpha, which was the first sorority established by African American college women in the U.S. This is a project that she intends to continue. She spoke about wanting to interview more women, and Rebecca also shared in the conversation last night that even as they were installing the show, Bradley was speaking with her from Rome saying, can I just film some Italian mothers and daughters and add this to the installation? And I think that's something that we will see in the future. She wants to go around the world and talk about relationships between mothers and daughters. So this is AKA, which is installed in a single channel format in this black box theater. So, of course, you're welcome to stay there, but for those who want to, let's go over to the third piece, Alone, which is on the far side of the building, of the galleries. Just. Alone won the Short Film Jury Award in Nonfiction at the 2017 Sundance Film Festival. And as I mentioned, Bradley lives and works in New Orleans, and so she's become friendly with a number of people she's met there. The main subject is a friend of hers. It's a woman whose lover is incarcerated for a nonviolent crime, and he has proposed marriage to her. We see her going through her daily activities, interestingly, including as she tries to tell her family about her plan to get married to this man, a screaming argument that she has with her mother, which we hear very loudly, but we do not see because the camera is positioned outside the house, so we see a closed door, but we very clearly hear that her family is questioning her decision to marry the man she loves because he is incarcerated. There are glimpses of her fiancé and voiceover of their conversations. I'm going to read directly from an op-ed piece that Garrett Bradley put into the New York Times after this film was released to talk about her motivations. She said, "I woke up one morning noticing that my loneliness could be measured in heat, that the warmth of my sheets extended only as far as my own body. I wondered how many men and women woke up in America feeling that same isolation and for how long. I thought of my friend Alone Watts, whose name holds a bitter aptness because it describes her own ongoing isolation because of her partner's incarceration. Alone's boyfriend, Desmond Watson, was arrested in October 2015 on a series of nonviolent charges. He has been in a private prison near their home in New Orleans ever since, in personal and legal limbo as he awaits a trial. The facility prohibits in-person visits. Alone and Desmond's story in many ways reflects our country's history of slavery, in particular for how it mirrors the chronic possibility of separation for enslaved people through the sale of family members. Frederick Douglass asserted that slave owners purposefully separated children from their parents in order to blunt the development of affection between them. After the Civil War, formerly enslaved men and women reassembled their families by placing newspaper ads in search of lost family members, and men and women signed up to formalize their unions. But the onslaught against the Black American family remains intractable. And so I hope this film can propose a way of thinking about marriage as a symbol, one with the power to contradict our legacy of historical exclusion, marriage as a right, not a privilege. So that was from Garrett's comments that she put in the New York Times, which talk about this film. And what's interesting also is that this film alone actually segues into the feature documentary Time that I mentioned Garrett just won a top prize for at Sundance last weekend. Later in the film Alone, you'll see a brief scene of another woman, Fox Rich, who Alone interacts with. In this momentary scene, Fox Rich makes a strong impression as she makes a strident comparison between the U.S. prison system and slavery. And Fox Rich is actually the subject of Garrett's next project, or the new project, Time. She's literally in there for a couple of seconds. So I wanted to just return to the catalog for the exhibition because it's such an extraordinary volume, and I didn't have as much time as I wished to say some things that I read in the catalog. Rebecca's essay is remarkable, and the CAM commissioned a conversation between Garrett Bradley and the film scholar Huey Copeland that is rich and revelatory about Garrett's work. So I encourage you to dive in for more explanations of terms relevant to Garrett Bradley and the exhibition, including side shadowing, critical fabulation, and as I mentioned earlier, color struck. I think that will really enhance your appreciation of the show. It's really been a privilege for me to take such a deep dive into this exhibition, and it's brought me an increased appreciation for Garrett Bradley's fascination with history, as well as her dedication to serving as what she refers to as a facilitator in her filmmaking practice. As she says, there are possibly more questions than answers to be found in the work, which I think you will agree is cathartic, challenging, provocative, and beautiful. So that's what I have, and I look forward to discussing it for people who can stay for lunch, and thanks to the CAM.